Hi, Paul Schrocken once again, and now we're doing another tutorial on using QPATH. So let's direct our attention to the screen. If you open up the apps portal here, one of the icons should be QPATH. If you double click QPATH, you have to wait for the application to load. Note, if you're on shift and you open it at the beginning of the shift, it's not going to take this much time to load each time. You may have to log back in, but it will stay loaded. You can also log in remotely, similar to how you do to Epic and the other apps. The login information is the same as what you use to log into Epic. I'm going to go ahead and log in without sharing my password. And you see this screen. This piece of paper we have here is to cover up the patient identifiers. Clearly, it will not be on your other computers. When we open up this page, you will see different columns. The first column is labeled exam date. This defaults to today. So only the studies that were completed today will show up in this column. So if you're trying to review a study from a prior day, it will not be here. If you click on this today icon, you see other options pop up. Yesterday, this week, last week, this month, a custom date range, or all studies. You may select whichever option you want. For example, I will click on this week, and you will see that additional studies populate. Then you will see a patient ID column. This patient ID column is where the CSN or MRN of the patient will pop up. The patient name column at this point is blank, but at some time in the future, we hope to link this with the patient MRN or CSN. The next relevant column is the exam type column. Here, the exam type is labeled based on the setting you chose on the ultrasound machine. You do have the option of sorting this by whichever exam type you want. Right now, it says all. If, for example, you want to look at only fast exams, you can click this blue all button and highlight fast, or cardiac, or biliary, or whichever one you would like. For now, I'm going to keep this as all. The next column is the operator column. This is where all non-attendings should show up. As you can see, some of the names are bold. If they are bold, this means that there is more than one operator on the study, but only the first name will show up. To view who else is on the study, you can hover over the name and this ... pops up. If you click this ... you will have a list of all users in QPATH. And if you scroll down, for a long time, the other user will have a check mark and will be bold. And you can look for additional users in this way. Also, if you forget to add somebody onto the study, you can simply in QPATH put a checkbox by their name and they will now be part of the study. The next column is the attending study. This is where the attendings will pop up when their usernames are populated in the diagnostician field in the Mindray. The next relevant column is going to be where it says images and clips. This will say how many images or clips are saved for that study. The next column is QA status. Here it will say whether or not the study has been submitted for QA and whether it has been completed. For studies that have not been submitted, they are labeled not submitted. For studies that, and I'm going to change this to last month to have more selections here. For studies that have been submitted but not yet QA'd, they will say pending. And for studies that have been QA'd, they will say complete. As you can see, we have lots of unsubmitted studies. For most users, these are all the columns you need to worry about. Now, If we go back to the exam type column, sometimes you see an exam that doesn't fit one of the exams that we have because it didn't link properly to the machine. You have the option of clicking on this slowly once, one more time. So 2 slow clicks, not a double click. And then you could change it to whatever exam it was. For example, if it was an aorta, you can change it to an aorta study. If you want to open the exam to view the images, you click on the date of the exam and you could see that the mouse pointer changes. If you click on it, you will see that we have thumbnails here and the image. I can go through the different thumbnails for them to pop up on the screen. I also have a worksheet that is associated with the aorta exam. And here what we do is we click the boxes in the worksheet to discuss the findings that you saw. When you are done, you click Submit for QA and you click OK. There is no need to send an email notification. To go back to the other studies, you click on List. And you can go through multiple other studies to finish QA. Now, for residency, the QA is required for graduation. For attendings, it is recommended, but we are not requiring it at this time. The benefit of completing the QA is that I get a notification and I could, in a more timely manner, look at the studies. And we could also see whether your interpretation of the images was the appropriate interpretation given confirmatory studies or given my review. It can also be helpful because I can give tips on how to better acquire the images based on the images that I'm seeing on the screen. If we open up a study one more time, we can also go click on this images button up here. This pulls up more thumbnails and makes the image appear bigger on the screen. It might be easier to review images in this view, but you could also review them from this initial view. Now, sometimes, especially for the residents, you might need to split images into multiple studies. For example, if on one patient you did a FAST exam and a renal exam, without changing the labels on the actual ultrasound unit, there might be images in here that correspond to the renal study as opposed to a FAST study. So let's say that these last 2 images I want to move into a renal study. I click the 2 check boxes here and I click on Split. When I click on Split, I have the option of selecting a new exam. I can use the keyboard to jump to the right exam type, and here we go, renal pops up. And I can, if I press OK, it'll move these 2 images into a renal study. Now, if I check the boxes here again, it will copy them into a renal study as opposed to just moving them. And then if I press OK, those 2 studies will pop up on the screen. When I go back to the list, I'm only going to see the 2 studies that I just split. To get the rest of the studies back, I will hit refresh. After you save your images, even if you're not doing the QA, it is important to at least look on QPATH to make sure that the images you just uploaded did get uploaded appropriately. Of note, for attendings, you have access to see all studies saved by all users in QPATH. So you will see multiple names and multiple studies. You have the option of either under operating or attending, depending on which field you put your user ID in, clicking myself. Then you will only see the studies that you are a part of. You can't click myself on both columns at the same time because this is not an either or, this is an and function, and your name is not in both fields at the same time. So you can try to click myself under operator. You could go back to all if nothing pops up, and you could try clicking myself under attending to see if any studies pop up here, and you will see that there might be names that pop up. If you want to go back to all, then you could again view all studies. If there's a study that got transmitted to QPATH without your name on it and without a patient identifier on it, you will see that it says NA. If this was your study, you can manually add your name on it by 2 slow clicks and finding your name in the drop-down list under the appropriate column. That concludes the QPATH tutorial.